Good morning and welcome to the Life After 50 show. I'm Kathryn Watson and I will be your host today. And we're going to be talking about paying for care for someone you love. And we're going to be talking about using VA benefits and Medicaid benefits. I've brought on a elder law attorney to talk to us today, and we'll bring her up in just a minute. This show today is sponsored by Find Houston Senior Care. Find Houston Senior Care is a web directory for the greater Houston area. So if you're in the greater Houston area and you're looking for some type of care for your elder loved one, you'll be able to find just about everything you need on Find Houston Senior Care. So come and visit us. I would like to get started now with our show because we've got a lot of questions for this lady. This is a hot topic. It's something that a lot of people need to know about, and the VA has made some changes recently. So we're going to be talking about that. I'm going to be bringing up in just a moment Sherry Rodriguez. Sherry Rodriguez received her undergraduate degree with honors from the University of Texas at Austin before attending law school at Baylor University School of Law. While she was in law school, she focused her studies on estate planning and probate law, and I found that very interesting. So I asked Sherry why a young person, 20, 22 years old, would even consider that kind of a field. And of course, she had a personal story that, like many of us do. So I'm going to bring Sherry up and let her tell you about that. Sherry currently works with McCullough Miller Law Firm here in Houston, Texas. And they offer elder law services of all types, from wills to probates to estate planning, and on, anything that you may need in those later years in life. So I'm going to bring Sherry up and we'll let her tell you a little bit about the backstory of how she got into this. Sherry, thanks for being on the show. We really appreciate you coming on with us today and taking time out of your busy day.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
So tell me the background story. You were telling me, but tell the viewers why you got into this field and what it means to you.
Sure. When I was in college, I was 20 years old, and I got a call one morning from my cousin that my father had passed away suddenly. He didn't have a will. He had done no estate planning whatsoever. We didn't know any probate attorneys. We didn't know what the process for probate was. We were just sort of lost. We hired an attorney who was, I think, looking back now, not very good at that job. And we had a really tough time in probate, and it really took what was a difficult time in our lives in the first place and just made it so much more difficult. So it inspired me to look into law school, take the bar to see how I did. I scored well enough to get into a law school. And so once I was there, I said, I'm going to focus on, probate, which is the, process after a loved one dies. I'm going to focus on that. And I'm also going to focus on estate planning because, the more planning that you can do up front, you sort of make that probate process after death a lot easier.
Yeah. This is so common in this industry. So many people in the elder care industry have a personal story like that. And that's really what drives us and makes us want to do better and help more people and get the word out and share information. So that's why we're doing the show today. That's my intention for the Life After 50 show, to help people with those burning questions, those unanswered questions that maybe they don't even know what the question is at this time. But I want us to be able to get out there and give them that information. So I'm really happy to have you here. For all of our listeners, if you're out there watching this show, please don't just stalk us. Comment in the comment section. Ask your questions. Don't be afraid. This is what this is about. Your question, I guarantee you, is probably one that 50,000 other people have too. It's not uncommon. You may think it's unique to you, but you would be surprised. So ask your questions. We'll try to answer them live on the show. If you're watching the replay of this, or maybe you're listening to the podcast, reach out to us and ask your questions. I'll make sure that those get to Sherry so that she can answer any questions you may have. And I want to put up here too the website where you can reach Sherry, HoustonElderLawyer.com. That's for the company that Sherry works with, McCullough Miller. So HoustonElderLawyer.com is the website where you can go and get a lot more information about this subject. So I'm just going to dive right in, Sherry.
Okay.
Start off with the VA benefits. A lot of people don't even really know about some of the VA benefits that might be available to them to help them pay for things like home care, or maybe an assisted living, or maybe an Alzheimer's care, memory care home, or something like that. They don't even know that that exists. So let's talk about that first.
Sure. There are so many different VA benefits that it's hard to keep track of them. So the VA pension and then the housebound and aid and attendance benefits are ones that are kind of below the radar for a lot of people. And those are the ones that can be used when someone, a veteran or the surviving spouse of a veteran, is disabled or over 65 and or they need help with their activities of daily living, which we refer to those as the ADLs. And those are things like eating, being able to use the restroom on their own, being able to move from a seated to a standing position on their own, things like that. If someone needs help doing those things, then that's an additional level of care. So the pension that we work most with, there's a base pension. And then if someone is kind of substantially confined to their home, that's called housebound. And then if they need assistance with those activities of daily living, that's called aid and attendance.
Okay. All right. So there's different programs depending on care that somebody needs.
That's right.
But they can bring in care into their own home, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's an important benefit because it can be costly bringing in home care. And a lot of seniors don't really have the extra funds. They're on a tight budget. So this really can help. So tell me about what could somebody who would qualify for this, what could they expect in terms of benefit dollars?
So depending on the level of care that they need and if they're married or not, and if one spouse and the other spouse are both veterans, they may expect from between around $1,800 a month to around $2,400 a month.
That's a lot. That's a whole lot. That can go a long way in providing some care. So that's huge. Is it that hard to apply for? And is it that hard to get approved?
So it was a little bit easier to get approved up until last or Thursday, October 18th. There were changes to the VA requirements. So there's 3 components to getting this pension. There is a service requirement. So the applicant in active duty for 90 days. And one of those days needs to be during a time that was defined by Congress as being wartime. So those are just, from this date to this date. If you served one day, then, and you had 90 days of active duty overall, then you may qualify for this pension. There's also sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, now you would have all that information on those dates. Would you have that on your website?
I believe
or would they need to contact you?
It may be on the website. I'm not sure. I know.
Okay, so if it's not on the website, just reach out to Sherry and she can get that information for you, right?
Yes.
Okay.
They roughly correspond to the times that the U.S. has been at war, but they don't start and end with the date that war was declared and the date that peace was declared. They kind of go a little bit beyond in some respects. And then like for Vietnam, it depends on where you were serving. There's 2 different windows. And then since around 1991, we've actually been considered to be in a continuous period of war. So there's going to be, this benefit's going to be really, really big once those veterans who served in the Persian Gulf, or during that period of time, once they start aging into the system, like, this is going to be a really, really big benefit.
Right.
There's also a medical component. So the person, for the base pension, they need to be 65 or older or disabled. And for the housebound pension, they need to be substantially confined to their home. It doesn't mean that they can never leave. It just means that for the most part, they're not able to move themselves from their home to another location. And then aid and attendance, like I said, they need assistance with those activities of daily living. So it would be kind of up to a doctor to determine whether they meet, one of those medical criteria. And then the last component is financial eligibility. And this is where we saw so many changes go into effect on October 18th. Prior to these changes, there wasn't a firm limit on an applicant's net worth when they were looking at applying for this benefit. There was kind of a rough guideline that if they had no more than $80,000 in assets, or in countable assets, and I'll get to countable assets more in a minute, but there was this idea that if they didn't have more than 80, then they were probably okay on the financial eligibility. But now we have, we call it a bright line rule. It's just a firm guideline from the Veterans Affairs Administration that the new limit is $123,600. And if anyone listening has ever looked into Medicaid, this is also the Community Spouse Resource Allowance under Medicaid. There's not, a strong link between the two. It's just they were using that number in the Medicaid context, and they found that it kind of worked well as a guideline for how many resources or how many assets a person could have. So they just used it in the VA context as well. So that was one of the public comments, is like, why are these the same? Are they linked? Are they, no, they don't have to be. Just kind of developed that way. When I said countable, sorry.
Hold on just a minute. I just wanted to acknowledge Jason. Thank you for your question. He's asking about Medicaid benefits. And Jason, if you'll hang in there, we're going to get to that in just a few minutes. I want to go ahead and let Sherry finish with the VA, okay? And then we'll get to your question. Okay.
So when I said countable assets, and I said I would get to that in a moment, the VA does not count a person's car in their assets, and they also do not count their house, provided that the house isn't on more than 2 acres. And if it is more than 2 acres, they won't count the house and the 2 acres. But if the remaining acreage is marketable, then they will count that. So that's kind of a new thing. We haven't seen what that looks like in practice. We haven't seen it applied. So what makes excess acreage not marketable? Maybe it doesn't have good road access or something like that. So we'll just kind of have to see how the decisions come down on that.
Right. So that's kind of interesting. Yeah. Because you've got a lot of people around the Houston area that do have some acreage, probably more than 2 acres easily. So
I'm sure
that's interesting. Okay.
Some creative arguments on why excess acreage isn't going to be marketable. So we'll have to see how those arguments play out, and then what the result is when it gets when the VA makes a decision on it. So, but for now, we know that the person's net worth, it's going to be calculated as their countable assets, so not their house, not their car, but everything else, and then also their annual income. So their monthly income times 12, they'll add that in to the calculation as well. And if that number is less than the 123,600, then they will, most likely be meeting that financial eligibility. If it's higher than the 123,600, then they need to do some planning.
Okay. All right. So let me go ahead. Have we covered pretty much most of the VA benefits? We've covered who can qualify and what amounts and ranges we're talking about. Let me go ahead. Let's answer Jason's question and kind of switch over to the Medicaid end of it, if you don't mind.
One thing I wanted to add about the VA regulations is, prior to this October 18th change in the regulations, a person applying for VA benefits, if they had more assets than they were allowed, they could transfer those out of their name and apply for this pension the next day, and that was fine. Now there's a look back period. The VA is going to look back 36 months from the date of application and see if someone made any transfers out of their name that were uncompensated. So meaning they didn't receive a good or they didn't receive a service in exchange for that. They just, transferred it to a child, transferred it to a trust, something like that. And based on if there are any of these uncompensated transfers, based on the amount, they will calculate a penalty period, which is, the person's otherwise eligible for this VA pension, but it's not going to kick in for a number of months until the penalty period's over. So that's a big change, because when that wasn't there, we had, very easy, flexible planning for, moving excess assets into a trust or to, an adult child or something like that. And now we don't really have that available. So for VA benefits, pre-planning is extremely important in a way that it wasn't before.
Yeah, exactly. So don't wait until you have those needs come up.
Right.
If you're a veteran, your spouse was a veteran, look into that right now and talk to an attorney, because down the road you may need those benefits, right?
Right.
Yeah. So that's huge. Get with your attorney, get with Sherry, get some information, and get your ducks in a row. Basically, get everything in place. So, quickly, Crystal wants to know, what areas of town do you cover, Sherry?
We cover any area of town in the Metro Houston area. We have our main office is in the Galleria area. We also have a space downtown that we use to meet clients, but we do remote signings all over town. We've gone to Sugar Land, Med Center, Katy. So our clients come to our office from all areas of town. So,
okay.
But
you also will go out to the client if need be?
Yes, if we have clients who, for whatever reason, they can't get into our office, they're hospitalized, something like that, then we will go out to meet with them.
Okay. All right. Well, it looks like we're getting a few questions on the Medicaid end. That seems to be a hot topic too. Let's go back to Jason's, because he was first, and then I have another one after that. Jason asked, what kind of resources do you have for families looking for Medicaid benefits?
Sure. Our firm, we work with a lot of clients who are looking to access Medicaid benefits for themselves or for their parents. So for Medicaid benefits, a lot of times the person who calls us initially is the adult child of a person who they're aging, they need assistance with their activities of daily living, things like that. And we, meet with them first, and then, meet with mom or dad, as the case may be, if they're able, or if the adult child is the agent of the power of attorney, then we can work directly with them on mom or dad's planning. So we are able to advise clients looking for Medicaid benefits. We can do pre-planning or we can do crisis planning. Pre-planning, of course, is always better because you have more options. Medicaid, so there are a variety of different Medicaid benefits in Texas. The ones that we work with are Medicaid benefits that kick in to pay for care in a skilled nursing facility. There are some really limited programs that will pay for care in the home, but they have extraordinarily long waiting lists. And so we tend to not see those very much, because most people, they're like, okay, no, we don't really want to wait. We want to work on getting some care in place right now. So once an applicant's approved for this Medicaid benefit, Medicaid will pay for whatever the person's income doesn't cover as far as their nursing home care. So if the nursing home care is $6,000 a month and the applicant's income is only $4,000 would go to the nursing home, and then Medicaid would cover the missing two.
Okay. All right. So we have another question.
Great.
And it looks like it's Azia, and I hope I'm saying that correctly. Thank you for coming on the show and asking your question. He says, do my parents have to spend all of their money in order to take advantage of Medicaid benefits?
No, that is a common misconception. And a lot of people do it that way. Mom or dad goes into a nursing home, they pay for the nursing home care out of mom or dad's, their life savings essentially until it's gone, and then they apply for Medicaid. So even or in pre-planning and even sometimes in a crisis situation, we can use some trust tools to move that money from mom or dad's name into a trust. And then, typically there will be some sort of penalty period because like with VA, there's a look back period. And then if there's any of those uncompensated transfers, there will be a penalty period assessed. But even with that penalty period being assessed, it's often financially beneficial to do that planning anyway, even in a crisis situation.
I did not know you could do it in a crisis situation at all. So that's good information. I appreciate that.
It doesn't always make financial sense, but a lot of the time it does.
Right. So let's just clarify, because I think probably some people watching this show, there's a lot of confusion about Medicare and Medicaid. Yes. So if you could just kind of clear up what is the difference between Medicare and Medicaid?
So Medicare is the health insurance program that people use after they have retired and they're 65 and they can go on Medicare. Medicaid is a different program. In our context, it's used to pay for care in a skilled nursing facility. So it's really not paying for medical care. It's paying for the care that's needed when someone has trouble with those activities of daily living again, moving from seated to standing position, using the restroom, dressing themselves, things like that.
Okay. All right. And here's another one. Crystal wants to know, she says, we've heard that families can lose their home to Medicaid after the parents pass. Is that true?
That does happen sometimes, and the program that causes that, but the way it happens is that any time a person receives benefits under Medicaid in Texas, once they pass away, Medicaid will file a claim against their estate to be repaid for those benefits that they paid out on that person's for that person's care. So usually the only big asset in the estate when the person passes away is their home, because like under the VA, someone's home is excluded. It's not accountable. It's not a countable resource up to a certain, it's not an acreage limit, but it's a certain equity limit. So, but there are some tools that we can use. It's some deeds that we can do to, move that house out of the parent's name at the time of death. So the parent would retain the right to use it, the right to sell it, lease it, whatever they want to do during life. But at the moment of death, ownership would vest in whoever they've named in the deed. It's commonly called a ladybird deed, if anyone's ever heard of that.
I've heard of that. Yeah, I didn't know really what it was. Okay, yeah.
You may also hear it be called an enhanced life estate deed, but the common name is ladybird deed. And
I have to ask, where did ladybird come from?
So
because I always think of Lady Bird Johnson. Exactly. Does it have anything to do with her?
So I've read a couple of different things, and one story is that LBJ used one of these deeds to transfer property to Lady Bird Johnson. But I've also read that that's not true, and that the real story is that the Florida law professor, the Florida lawyer who came up with the idea of the Lady Bird deed and sort of blazed a trail on that, he used the name Lady Bird in the kind of example fact pattern that he used when he was explaining this deed to other people. So I've heard both things. I think the second story is the true one, but yeah. Okay. A little bit of legal folklore.
Interesting. Yeah, because I always wondered about that. I had heard of it. I didn't really know what it was, but I always thought of Lady Bird Johnson, such a nice lady.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what other resources do you have to help in the education process?
One thing I really like about this firm is that we're very education focused here. You mentioned earlier the workshops or the seminars that we do. We have complimentary workshops a couple of times a month on different topics. The next one that we have is next month on November 7th, and it's about smart aging. And that's a co-presentation by our founding partner, Tom McCullough, and the founder of Elder Advisory Group, Janet Jackson McCullough. And so they do a co-presentation about aging and different resources, different things to think about, risks, different potential solutions, things like that. We also have done several workshops recently about the VA benefits because of the changes that were made. There's also just some that were more along the lines of basic estate planning, things that are, risks as far as to someone's savings, their assets, things like that. So we do these regular workshops. They're complimentary, open to the public. We ask that people RSVP through our website, but we do those. We also, our website has a lot of resources. We have a lot of blog posts about different topics that can, people can use to get the juices flowing on different issues that they may not be thinking of. There's a lot with estate planning and particularly elder law that's not necessarily intuitive, and that if you're not engaged in researching, you're not going to even know that the issues are there. We also have some other resources like a family document checklist that someone can use to kind of audit, what do we have as far as estate planning? Do we have a will? Do we have a power of attorney, a medical power of attorney, directive to physicians, things like that. And we also have some VA resources as well. That's why I think we have that wartime, like the list of different wartime periods on there, but we also have like the 2018 benefit schedule. So someone can see, okay, I need, the housebound benefit and I'm unmarried, this would be the maximum benefit that I could get. So lots of resources there.
Lots of resources. And they can find those resources at HoustonElderLawyer.com, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. So again, that's HoustonElderLawyer.com. This show will also be on iTunes as a podcast, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, Buzzsprout. So it's going to be on a lot of different, within the week, it'll be on all of these different podcasts. So for those of you who may be tuning in for just a few minutes and you would really rather just listen to it while you're driving to work or while you're jogging or something else, you can find us on podcasts, and that's the Life After 50 show. Sherry, unfortunately, our time is up. This goes fast. I know, yeah. I told you it would. It goes really fast. You have such a wealth of information, and hopefully we've gotten some good information out there for the people listening. And I really appreciate all of the people who took the time to show up for the show today and ask your questions. If you're watching the replay or if you're listening to us, go ahead and ask your questions. We will make sure to get them to Sherry Rodriguez at the McCullough Miller Law Firm so that she can answer those questions and help you further. Attend a workshop. I can't stress that enough. Get the information and the help that you need before something happens. It's a lot easier, isn't it, Sherry? You've been there personally, and it's stressful enough when you're dealing with an illness or a death of a loved one. It's twice as stressful if you're having to now deal with legal issues and financial issues at the same time. So again, thank you so much, Sherry. I really appreciate you coming. I'm going to go ahead and put you back down in the lobby. All right. And well, this was a wonderful show today, and thanks to everybody who showed up. We're really happy to have you show up on the Life After 50 show, and we've had some wonderful guests. We really have. Next week, the guest is going to be a surprise. I'm firming up with somebody right now, so stay tuned and find out what the next show on the Life After 50 show will be. It's what you need to know. I'm Kathryn Watson, and this is sponsored by FindHoustonSeniorCare.com. Again, that's Find, F-I-N-D, HoustonSeniorCare.com. Have a great day, everybody.